Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. The CCC is still facing financial woes, and the staff say they are receiving the short end of the stick. The National Workers Union, which represents the workers, explained that the union continues dialogue with the CCC to ensure that a solution is met, as well as to ensure that such predicaments do not reoccur.
The National Workers Union, NWU, Castro's Constituency Council, CCC, and the local government during the past few weeks agreed to a tripartite investigation into the allocation of the CCC's funds in order to understand how and why the council cannot meet its obligation to pay daily and monthly paid workers, an expense which is simply 49% of their expenditure. At a meeting with its membership of the CCC on July 7th, the NWU brought forward two recommendations made by the council, which were 1. The implementation of a 40-hour workweek, and 2. Rotation of staff on a 1 week in and 1 week out basis without payment on the 1 week out. Secretary General of the National Workers Union, Johan Hayward, explained that members were not very receptive to the recommendations brought forward.
The employees indicated that they cannot accept a rotation. A rotation is premised based on demand, workload. If workloads and volumes are dropping, then you could justify a rotation, like in the hospitality sector, where whenever your occupancy levels in the off-season is dropping, persons are rotated. In CCC's operations, you don't have a reduction in workload. In fact, some argue with all the health protocols and all the things that people are being confronted with now, health-wise, the workload actually is on the ascendancy. So that definitely cannot justify, and that is the position of the employees, that can't justify a rotation schedule. So that was not accepted. And the other one, where they were talking about a 40-hour shift system, the employees said, well, what they're prepared to do is continue working Monday to Friday, just the 8 hours per day, and Saturday and Sunday operations, if there are any, will be managed and assessed and dealt with.
Haywood says at the meeting, workers brought up the point that revenue from the CCC is being used in other things, and government should step in order to offer guidance. Coming out of the meeting, he says the union has put forward a few suggestions.
One of the things that can happen and probably should happen is government should take over the payment of the salaries to the council employees, like they do with the other councils around the country. The government has a fairly decent model with regards to local government councils around the country, and given that CCC is the largest municipality in the country, that kind of model maybe can be implemented with regards to them through government paying the salaries. And likewise, it was unanimously agreed that a thorough, in-depth assessment of the CCC's operations has to take place as a matter of urgency, so that the government coffers are not led to the ultimate death of the council. The council has a very critical role to play.
He indicated that many questions were raised as to where and on what the other 51% of the CCC's revenue was being spent at the meeting, and at this point, he says, the government has received correspondence asking for a thorough investigation to be carried out at the CCC to answer the questions presented, as well as claims of a padded workforce and allegations of corruption. He says the union and its membership at this point are simply playing the game of watch and wait. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzague.
In a press conference on Wednesday, Dr. Ernest Hilaire argued that there are many instances where it can be said that the state of emergency in St. Lucia has been abused.
I've heard the Prime Minister, and I think it was the CMO and even the Minister of Health, said that they need to have the state of emergency in place because the Cuban doctors have to be registered, and if not, the process would be so long. And that's not entirely true. In fact, under the Health Practitioners Act, provision is made for the temporary registration of medical practitioners. And unless they can come and explain why that cannot apply, that is misleading what they're saying, because they do not need a state of emergency to register the Cubans. They can do so under the Health Practitioners Act. So you have to ask the question, why do they insist on having the state of emergency? We've already explained that every power they need can be found under other legislation. Why do they need a state of emergency? And I heard the Prime Minister said that they're not abusing it and they've never abused it. But surely, when you deny the Black Lives Matter event because there is a state of emergency in place, aren't you abusing the state of emergency?
St. Lucian sports icon and former West Indies cricketer Darren Sammy has sparked conversation on race and the commonplace nature of some racial slurs in the South Asian culture. His experience in the Indian Premier League and the nickname Kalu has grabbed the attention of the international community and was featured on CNN. Darren Sammy said that while watching a show on Netflix released shortly after the killing of George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man who died after a police officer knelt on his neck for almost 9 minutes, he heard comedian Hassan Minhaj describe the term Kalu, a word that is used as a racial slur in the Indian subcontinent. Sammy says his mind immediately went back to when he played in the Indian Premier League in 2013 and 14, and in particular when the nickname Kalu was used to describe him and another Sri Lankan player. The nickname became so commonplace that Sammy says he even used it to describe himself. He spoke with CNN.
Do you know what we call black people? We call them kala. It means black, not in a good way. If someone in your family is dark-skinned, we clown them. We call them kallu. Look at kallu.
I was being called the exact same word that he described that was degrading to us black people.
It's fair to say I was a bit angry. You know, having experienced such great memories, you know, with your teammates, the camaraderie and the unity that was in there, I still had doubts. What I was hearing from the documentary from Hassan, what that word actually meant. I wanted clarification because I didn't want to bring myself to believe that these guys, knowing what that word meant, still used it as a nickname for me. So when somebody with the knowledge and the background of the culture explained it, I think any person would be angered or disappointed by that. And it came at a point in time where racism and social injustice and systemic racism was at the forefront of everybody's mind. It was all out there in your face.
Sammy's social media accounts show a number of people defending the nickname and even calling him it. Their argument is that the word isn't racist and is just a nickname. However, Sammy says the ongoing usage shows that there is still a huge part of the South Asian culture that really needs educating. He told CNN that as someone who leads, he is not afraid to have difficult conversations. He also highlighted the need for greater diversity in the sport of cricket.
How many coaches of color are in head coach position? Do you think you will ever see a coach of color being the head coach of England or Australia or New Zealand? Have you ever thought about that? And that's just a question I pose towards the governing body. You know, give us more opportunities.
The Board of Control for Cricket in India, which regulates the IPL, didn't respond immediately to CNN's request for comment. Sammy, who has played 38 test matches for the West Indies, said cricket's international governing body, the International Cricket Council, ICC, must also take responsibility for educating players and fans about racism. As part of protecting the health and well-being of St. Lucians, the government of St. Lucia has made the decision to review and amend the Public Health Act. More in this report from Frenel Neptune.
The amendment of the Public Health Act in 2019 is expected to address some of the key public health issues that are relevant and current in the development of the country. Chief Environmental Health Officer Parker Ragnanan spoke on the need to amend the Public Health Act given the changing environment.
This review allows for new areas to be brought under regulations. Some of these new areas include body art. So we know St. Lucians have been doing tattooing and body piercing and so forth, but that practice had not been regulated. So under the new Public Health Act, it makes provision for regulations to be established for body art. Under the Public Health Act that was revised in 2019 as well, there is a new area that deals with smoking of tobacco products in public spaces. And what this act has done now is to take measures to ensure that public smoking is prohibited, and therefore it must be done under very regulated conditions. So there are now regulations in place to deal with these areas. The revised act also deals with issues like spas and massage parlors, and these are new areas generally.
Ragnanan says a key part of preparing the amended Public Health Act and regulation was extensive consultation with a cross-section of society and stakeholders.
The amendment of the legislation, both the Public Health Act and the regulations, has gone through a significant process over a period spanning more than 15 years now. There have been different consultations at different levels, including the government employing a legal consultant to review these regulations and to have consultations with key stakeholders and parties and to come up with the best mix for St. Lucia. And that was done. Apart from the consultations, there were discussions interministerially as well to look at what is the best approach in dealing with the regulations.
In the new Public Health Act, 15 pieces of the public health regulations were amended and new regulations were enacted. Reporting from the Communications Unit of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, I am Fernal Neptune.
You're watching the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Stay with us. There's more coming up after the break.